It's always exciting when a brilliant, beloved actor gets cast in a cherished, coveted role that's been previously inhabited by numerous talented performers. But for one reason or another, fantastic actors end up whiffing their shot to portray iconic screen legends. So with that in mind, here are great actors who played the worst versions of characters. Johnny Depp, Willy Wonka. Now, the running for Best Willy Wonka is admittedly just a three-horse race, but let's get the obvious one out of the way first. There's simply no beating Gene Wilder's iconic, note-perfect performance as the character in 1971's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's hilarious, it's charming, and it's just unnerving enough. More recently, we have Timothée Chalamet's surprisingly pretty good turn as a younger version of Wonka. Sure, he's never going to replace Wilder, and comes off a tad too sanitized at times, but given the vocal outcry when Chalamet was first cast, he acquitted himself admirably. And that leaves Johnny Depp as the worst of the trio, with his inexplicable performance in Tim Burton's 2005 take, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. To Depp's credit, he sensibly avoids trying to merely imitate Wilder's prior performance, though his creepy-to-a-fault Michael Jackson impersonation has only become more polarizing as the years have passed. Depp's bold version of Wonka isn't without its defenders, but if you ask most, he's definitely the least palatable of the three.
Sally Field, Aunt May. Spider-Man's Aunt May Parker has been prominently portrayed by 4 actresses on screen, each of them supremely talented performers who on paper were perfectly cast for the part. Rosemary Harris brought enormous emotional depth to May in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, while Marissa Tomei gave MCU fans a younger, spunkier iteration, and Lily Tomlin spiritedly voiced another version of her in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, nobody's gonna come out and blame Academy Award winner Sally Field for botching the role of May in the Amazing Spider-Man films, because of course the fault rests entirely with the series scripts. May is written as bafflingly forgettable in both movies, something Field herself even acknowledged in a 2016 Howard Stern interview, where she hilariously said, "It's really hard to find a three-dimensional character in it. You work it as much as you can, but you can't put 10 pounds of S-word in a 5-pound bag." I'll let you guess what the S-word was. It's tough to argue with that, really. Field added that she only took the role to honour the film's producer Laura Ziskin, a friend of hers who died from cancer before its release. Now I want to know really quickly, what is your favourite Spider film of all time? Was it an Amazing Spider-Man movie or another one? You let me know in the comments section down below.
Jason Clarke, John Connor. You need only look so far as Oppenheimer to see that Jason Clarke is a mightily compelling acting talent. But amid the surprisingly large pantheon of actors who've portrayed Terminator's resistance leader John Connor, he comes persuasively dead last. Granted, it's hardly Clarke's fault. In the 5th Terminator movie, Terminator Genisys, he happened to be saddled with the worst on-paper rendition of Connor to date, and so couldn't do much to elevate the rancid material. His Connor stumbles right out of the gate through the bold if misguided decision to have him be attacked and transformed into a villainous Terminator, a crime only slightly less offensive than sequel Dark Fate's choice to kill Connor off altogether. Looking back at all the main John Connor actors, Edward Furlong was the classic original, Nick Stahl and Thomas Dekker did solid work playing him in Terminator 3 and the Sarah Connor Chronicles TV series respectively, and then there's the whole Christian Bale debacle. Though Bale was ultimately a fair letdown in the role, again due more to the material than his work, he at least brought a visceral intensity to the part that Clarke categorically didn't. Even prior to being turned, Clarke's riff on the character lacked the gravitas of someone who could actually lead the world against Skynet.
Chris Pine, Jack Ryan. Hands up those among us who even remembers that Chris Pine played Jack Ryan that one time. Tom Clancy's legendary CIA agent has been played by a bevy of name actors, with Alec Baldwin, Harrison Ford and Ben Affleck preceding Pine in films of varying quality, while Pine was succeeded by John Krasinski in the eponymously titled Amazon series. Pine played Ryan in 2014's somnambulant Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit, an inexplicably forgettable Kenneth Branagh-directed romp which, despite grossing over $130 million worldwide, pretty much evaporated from the culture's collective memory within weeks of release. Pine's a terrifically talented and versatile actor who has proven himself capable in both dramatic and comedic fare. Yet his rendition of Jack Ryan was shockingly lacking in personality. feeling less like Ryan than an ersatz charisma-bereft Jason Bourne. While there's no shortage of Jack Ryan fans who weren't particularly fond of Affleck's portrayal, at least he feels like an honest-to-God character, whereas Pine's take is basically a cardboard cutout action man. Only my action man was a bit more entertaining. Clearly, the script is primarily to blame here, leaving Pine unable to find an interesting or even basically entertaining angle from which to approach the character.
Robert Downey Jr., Dr. Dolittle. Say what you will about anyone else on this list, but they never gave a dragon a colonoscopy for our entertainment. Much as we all love recent Oscar winner Robert Downey Jr., his first post-Marvel Cinematic Universe project saw him deliver an absolutely head-scratching interpretation of legendary animal-whispering veterinarian Dr. Dolittle. In live-action terms, Rex Harrison popularized the part in 1967's original musical film, which, while divisively received, did net Harrison a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor. Over 30 years later, Eddie Murphy radically reinvented the character like only he could. And though his two Dolittle movies weren't great either, his boundless energy nevertheless carried both films to box office glory. As for Downey's effort, much of the criticism focused on his rather bungled attempt at a Welsh accent, requiring much of his dialogue to be very obviously redubbed during post-production. As effortlessly charming as Downey is, this just wasn't the register for him. The result was a spectacular misfire of a performance, and that's before we even bring up that climactic rummage inside a congested dragon's colon.
Christoph Waltz, Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Ernst Stavro Blofeld is of course the most statuesque and recognizable of all the James Bond villains, having appeared in some form in 9 of 007's movies while being played by a bevy of talented actors, such as Donald Pleasance, Telly Savalas, Charles Gray, Max von Sydow, and Christoph Waltz. There's no real consensus on who the best Blofeld is, though if we exclude the character's bizarre appearance in For Your Eyes Only, where he couldn't be called Blofeld for legal reasons and was portrayed by a faceless stand-in, it's pretty clear who comes last. Oscar winner Christoph Waltz playing Blofeld seemed like a slam-dunk proposition in theory. Yet Spector's script was such a clunky hash of half-formed ideas and contrived plot twists that Waltz was ultimately left with little compelling to do. Even Daniel Day-Lewis himself would have struggled to give a good performance while dealing with a narrative which revealed Blofeld to be Bond's adoptive brother and the secret architect of his various misfortunes. Waltz was basically factory-made to play a Bond villain, which makes the utter failure of his turn as the character that much more disheartening. It's hardly his fault, but them's the breaks, folks.
Halle Berry, Catwoman. Nobody's going to argue that Halle Berry lacked the sexual charisma or acting talents to play Catwoman in a big-budget movie. But goddamn, 2004's Catwoman solo film missed the mark in basically every way that a movie can. Even if you can forgive that the script ditches the Selena Kyle moniker in favour of an essentially rebooted Catwoman called Patience Phillips, Berry is given shockingly little to do here, beyond drop god-awful quips. Especially as most of the action is delegated to eyesore-inducing digital doubles that looked hideous even 20 years ago. Compared to every other live-action version of Catwoman, Berry is the consensus last place, and there's little room for debate about that. Berry ultimately won a Worst Actress Razzie for her performance in the role, an award which she gamely accepted in person, so at least she's got a sense of humour about it.
Kristen Stewart, Snow White. Literally dozens of actresses have portrayed Snow White in various films, TV series, and animated projects over the years, with the more notable performances including Adriana Casalotti's voice in the original 1937 Disney animation, Carol Heiss in Snow White and the Three Stooges, Lily Collins in Mirror Mirror, and Jennifer Goodwin in the TV series Once Upon a Time. But the highest profile of them all was Kristen Stewart, who played the character in 2012's Snow White and the Huntsman. Stewart's casting at the time proved controversial due to her also being the star of the maligned Twilight franchise. Yet her non-blockbuster work already made it abundantly clear she was a major acting talent. All the same, Stewart's performance received wildly mixed reviews from critics, and rightly so. She failed to bring much personality at all to the character, which is all the more disappointing given the film's intriguing attempt to reinvent Snow White as a badass warrior princess. Stewart's work ended up being easily overshadowed by Charlize Theron, whose performance as the evil Queen Ravenna categorically stole the show.
Jackie Earle Haley, Freddy Krueger. Recasting horror icon Freddy Krueger for 2010's A Nightmare Nightmare on Elm Street remake was a basically thankless task, because for an entire quarter century the role had been defined by Robert Englund's singularly skin-crawling performance across all the movies and also TV spin-off Freddy's Nightmares. But it was tough not to be intrigued when Oscar nominee Jackie Earle Haley was cast, a veteran character actor with an incredible penchant for portraying weirdos, creeps, and general oddballs. And to Haley's credit, he certainly does his absolute damnedest to deliver a Freddy quite unlike Englund's. Yet even if you can forgive the dud script, his work was severely compromised by the terrible digitally assisted makeup. Even the film's own makeup artist, Bart J. Mixon, criticized the garish CGI embellishments added to Freddy's facial burns in post-production, in turn encroaching upon Haley's committed effort to reinvent Freddy for a new generation. It wasn't for lack of trying, but to the surprise of few, Haley's effort fell far short of Englund's utterly statuesque work in the role.
Tom Cruise Jack Reacher. When 2012's Jack Reacher film was first announced, there was much hand-wringing from fans of Lee Child's source novels that star Tom Cruise was almost an entire foot shorter than Reacher's stated height in the books, while also lacking his hulking 250-pound physique. Cruise certainly gave a solid performance in the role, even if he didn't really capture the physical essence of the character at all. And so when Amazon began developing a Jack Reacher TV series, they decided to find a more source-faithful actor for the role. Enter Alan Ritchson, who, while yet to prove himself an actor of Cruise's caliber, is a perfect physical fit for Reacher, toweringly tall and an absolute unit, while also bringing solid dramatic gravitas to the part. Ritchson's casting has been met with considerable praise from fans and critics alike, most feeling him better suited for the role, even if he hardly has Cruise's A-list clout. Even Child himself more or less admitted back in 2018 that Cruise was wrong for the part, and Ritchson is just a better all-round pick to meet the requirements of portraying the character. Cheers for checking out this video today, folks. Hit that subscribe button down below for more Whatculture in your day.
Kevin Costner, Robin Hood. Given that the Robin Hood legend is many centuries older than cinema itself, it's little surprise that the mythic outlaw has been portrayed near countless times across both TV and film. Some of the more prominent screen Robin Hoods include the great Errol Flynn in 1938's The Adventures of Robin Hood, Carrie Elwes in Mel Brooks' outrageous parody Robin Hood Men in Tights, Russell Crowe in Ridley Scott's 2010 film, and most recently Taron Egerton in the thunderously forgettable 2018 reboot. But it's impossible to forget Kevin Costner's turn as the character in 1991's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. For while Costner is a terrifically talented actor with a bevy of remarkable roles to his name, this just wasn't one he was meant to take. Costner playing an English nobleman is laughable enough before we even get to his total lack of an attempt to hide his natural American twang, resulting in a performance that feels hilariously out of place in an action-adventure film set primarily in 12th century England. The accent debacle proved controversial enough that Elwes even snidely referenced it in Men in Tights, hilariously quipping, "Unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent."
Joaquin Phoenix, Jesus Christ. Few historical figures have been portrayed by more actors than Jesus Christ himself, with the coveted part played by the likes of Max von Sydow, Donald Sutherland, John Hurt, Willem Dafoe, Christian Bale, Jim Caviezel, Ewan McGregor, and many more. And when Joaquin Phoenix was cast to play Jesus in Garth Davis's 2018 drama Mary Magdalene, it seemed like a very real possibility that he'd give the definitive cinematic take on the character, and perhaps even nab himself some serious awards attention. But that could not be more off the mark. Phoenix's snoozy, ambient chugging take on the Son of God is a soul-crushing bore to sit through, and were it not for Rooney Mara's slightly more spirited take on Mary, this would be an unrelenting slog to watch. Phoenix was clearly trying to do something different and give audiences a screen rendition of Jesus unlike any other, which he technically did, but the result is a rare acting whiff from one of our finest performers.
Tom Hanks, Gepetto. Pinocchio's creator Gepetto has been played by literally dozens of actors across both live action and animated projects, but on paper perhaps none seemed quite so perfect as America's dad himself, Tom Hanks. Hanks' easy charms made him seem a superb fit for Gepetto in Robert Zemeckis' 2022 live-action Pinocchio film. And while it's tough to consider the idea of Hanks ever giving a genuinely bad performance, Outside of his work in Elvis, perhaps, this was definitely a missed opportunity. It's just a shockingly flat, even empty turn from one of the all-time great actors. Where's the warmth we expect from Hanks? He just disappears into the mostly digital scenery, ensuring that this uncanny, largely unasked-for live-action Pinocchio movie firmly lacks the necessary emotional core. Compare Hanks' work to the Gepetto played by Bob Hoskins, and Hanks just feels like a total non-entity. What a waste.
Julia Roberts' Tinkerbell. Much like Snow White, Peter Pan's Tinkerbell has been portrayed near countless times on screen in both live-action and voiced animated form. Some of the more notable performances include Virginia Brown Fair in the 1924 film, Margaret Kerry, whose movements were used as reference material for Disney's 1953 animated Peter Pan, Ludivine Sagnier in the 2003 live-action film, Keira Knightley in the 2011 Neverland TV series, Rose McIver in the Once Upon a Time show, and Yara Shahidi in 2023's Peter Pan and Wendy. But by far the most high-profile and accomplished actress to ever play Tink, however, is Julia Roberts in Steven Spielberg's 1991 adventure film Hook. Much as Roberts' expressive face seemed like a fine fit for Peter Pan's fairy psychic, she ultimately failed to tease the character's mischievous qualities out, and to this day is widely derided as a miscast. Roberts' underwhelming performance may be due to her being preoccupied by personal problems during filming. Namely, the breakdown of her relationship with fiancé Kiefer Sutherland has reportedly led to her being a difficult presence on set. Beyond invoking the ire of Spielberg himself, the crew reportedly nicknamed Roberts Tinker Hell. But beyond the behind-the-scenes kerfuffle, it's just a very flat, unremarkable performance from someone we know is capable of much better.
David Niven, James Bond. Bond fans are extremely passionate about their favourite and least favourite actors to portray 007. And while many might deem George Lazenby the worst to ever don the tuxedo, he wouldn't quite qualify as a great actor now, would he? But more to the point, Lazenby's underrated turn as 007 isn't the worst of the lot. That honour goes to acting legend David Niven, who played Bond in 1967's spoof film Casino Royale. Fascinatingly, despite being both a terrific actor and Bond author Ian Fleming's first choice to play the spy in Dr. No, Niven's performance doesn't really touch the sides. Sure, Casino Royale 67 is a spy parody and hardly a legit Bond film, but even so, Niven isn't given much opportunity to ooze the suaveness we all know he had, even if it's clear that in his younger years he would have knocked the role out of the park.
Luis Guzman, Gomez Adams. Adams' family patriarch Gomez Adams has been played by some serious talent over the years. John Astin in the 1960s TV series, the late great Raul Julia in the two big-screen 1990s movies, Tim Curry, who might have been the sole saving grace of the otherwise execrable 1998 TV film Addams Family Reunion, and the voice of Oscar Isaac in the most recent animated films. For Netflix's Addams Family series Wednesday, Gomez was played by the terrific Luis Guzman, who in theory should have knocked this part out of the park. And yet, while Catherine Zeta-Jones does fine work as his screen partner Morticia, Guzman's performance ends up feeling like a miss. Granted, his screen time throughout the series is pretty scant, and he's not given much of interest to do. But all the same, this feels less like the Gomez we know than Guzman simply dressing up in Gomez cosplay for Halloween. It's not really the actor's fault, but did nevertheless result in the most forgettable mainstream portrayal of the character to date.
Jennifer Lawrence, Mystique. There was a lot of excitement when rising star Jennifer Lawrence was cast to play a younger version of Mystique in the X-Men prequels. Yet that enthusiasm speedily evaporated once audiences got a load of her performance. In X-Men First Class, Lawrence was fine, but she lacked the reptilian athleticism and seductive allure of Rebecca Romijn's performance in the original X-Men trilogy. This was compounded by Lawrence ditching the blue Mystique makeup for all subsequent X-Men films, opting instead for a rather naff-looking body sock due to her allergies. Lawrence also reportedly lobbied to feature Mystique less in her blue form in order to avoid the arduous makeup process altogether. By the time we got to X-Men Apocalypse and especially Dark Phoenix, it was painfully clear that Lawrence was totally checked out of the role and ready to move on. Despite her undeniable acting chops, she never really made the part her own. Unlike Romaine, Keaton, who remains the definitive screen portrayal of Mystique.
Jared Leto, the Joker. There are few superhero movie roles more coveted than that of Batman's iconic arch-nemesis, the Joker, who in the live-action cinematic stakes has been played to perfection by Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, and Joaquin Phoenix, the latter two even winning Oscars for their mesmerizing performances. This isn't to forget Cesar Romero's wonderfully cartoonish take on the clown prince of crime from the Batman TV series, Cameron Monaghan's Joker-adjacent version on the Gotham show, nor in the voiceover stakes Mark Hamill's peerlessly creepy rendition across various games and animated outings, and Zach Galifianakis' self-aware riff in the Lego Batman movie. Really, there's only one major Joker actor who fumbled the ball, isn't there? And that is Jared Leto, who despite what certain quarters of the internet might suggest, is indeed a great, even Oscar-winning actor. In theory, he seemed like a fine get to play a rebooted version of the supervillain in David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Yet Leto's big, loud, over-the-top Joker ultimately felt like a pale shade of his predecessors, even if Leto was admittedly constrained by the rough script and how egregiously his part was trimmed down for the final cut. From the aggressively tacky design upwards, this was a wildly miscalculated take on a beloved character, and while it feels like Leto never really got a fair shot with the Joker, he still gave us the worst major iteration yet.
Michael B. Jordan, the Human Torch. Now to be clear, we're not going to count Jay Underwood's performance from 1994's unreleased, though available in bootleg form, Fantastic Four film. And while the mid-2000s Fantastic Four films weren't particularly good, Evans was nevertheless perfectly cast as the wisecracking a-hole rendition of Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. All the same, there was good reason to be excited when Michael B. Jordan was cast to play the part in Josh Trank's 2015 reboot, only for the famously bungled production to give Jordan almost nothing worthwhile to do whatsoever. For an actor with as much charisma and screen presence as Jordan to basically fade into the periphery and feel like a mere piece of furniture is ridiculous to even consider, and yet it happened. He gave a flat performance because that's all the script had for him, in turn leaving audiences craving the peppy animated stylings of Evans' prior work as the character.
Emma Watson, Belle. Beauty and the Beast Belle is one of Disney's most iconic characters, having been played by Linda Hamilton in 1987's TV series, albeit with a different name, Emily de Raven in the Once Upon a Time TV series, Keegan-Connor Tracy in the Descendants film franchise, and most iconically the voice of Paige O'Hara in the 1991 animation. Emma Watson was cast as Belle for Disney's 2017 live-action remake, and while she undeniably fits the beauty requirements of the part just fine, beyond the superficial qualities she proved to be fatally miscast. The big problem? Watson's singing voice sadly just wasn't up to snuff, with her vocals clearly receiving a ton of post-production auto-tuning, as proves hugely distracting throughout the film's many musical sequences. While Watson fares better as the bookish, confined Belle in the film's earlier scenes, her performance also gets strangely wooden once the drama ramps up. It feels like Watson was cast less for her suitability to every facet of the part than because Disney knew they had a guaranteed hit on their hands with her placement in the lead role. And for better or worse, they were right in the end, with the film going on to become a $1.2 billion box office beast.